Hello, and welcome to Symphony Preview. My name is Cameron, the Director of Development of the Helena Symphony, and I am joined today by Alan R. Scott, our Music Director, and we will be talking about our upcoming concert this Saturday. Thank you for joining us.
I'm glad we're here.
Wonderful. It's great to be here at Helena Civic Television, and yeah, let's just chat about what we have coming up this next weekend. So, just diving right in, we have an incredible soloist who will be coming to Helena for this upcoming concert, Claire Wang-Chi. Can you tell us a little bit about, your relationship with Claire, how you guys started working together, and why this is so exciting that she's coming to Helena again?
Yeah, we bring in world-class guest artists, but it's hard. I'm not comparing them, but it's just a matter of that Claire is considered one of the greatest living pianists in the world today. I'm very biased because we met when she was about 10 years old. She was competing in a competition that I happened to be the president of the jury for, and the prize was to perform with me at several different orchestras, and whoever won the competition for people under 18. Well, she was not the youngest, if I recall, but one of the youngest that competed. And she won Beethoven First Piano Concerto, and then we performed that many times throughout the country and together. And so she was raised outside of Philadelphia, not far from where I was raised. And of course she was very young. And so her mother would go with us, and we would tour and things. And then she went to the Curtis Institute of Music, which is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, conservatory in the United States, and then went on and followed a teacher to Germany. And was still performing all over the world, but really settled in Germany and lives there now. Still goes back to Pennsylvania, but is in Germany quite a bit and is performing in Europe especially a lot. Even during COVID, she's been performing. And often when you even go on airlines and you choose to play the music that the airline can play, and you can choose if you go in the classical, usually it's Claire Wang-Chi that's playing. She has some award-winning recordings. She's one of the greatest recording artists alive today. As a soloist, just doing solo piano work, and as a soloist with orchestra, both are really hailed as some of the finest recordings. She's known for her work of Chopin, but she's also known in general just for, one critic said she might have the fastest fingers in the world, and she plays very fast stuff really excitingly well. She also plays even some of the big stuff like Rachmaninoff with such clarity that's very unique. Mm-hmm. And then she'll go back to Beethoven and Mozart and Brahms, and that are, she doesn't seem to have, she's not defined by one style. She really is versatile. I think a lot of us are. I mean, I've often been defined by either the music of Mahler or Beethoven and opera, and not always recognized for other things, where Claire is very much recognized for her playing. And when we had to reschedule the second half of the season, I called her, and she wasn't scheduled to be here, and I said, would you want to come? And because we want to do with artists that the orchestra really likes working with, that I can work with quickly because we don't have much time, and she's not an audience, and we want that relationship to be instant. Of course, she's a grown woman now, so I still find myself being a little big brothery and protective at times with her, and sometimes I catch myself correcting her, like we did when she was a little girl, and I would be like, no, Claire, we have to do it this way, and of course, she knows far better than I do right now. But we talked about the Brahms Second Piano Concerto, and those who might be watching know classical music. Brahms Second Piano Concerto is the longest concerto. It's about 50 minutes, which is very long, about almost twice the length of a normal concerto. And it's also the most difficult. It's a concerto that has caused more pianist injuries. And many pianists have had to stop playing because of this piece. One, it's long, and there's a lot of octave work, both hands, just tons of octave work, endlessly. Very complicated. And at the same time, it's kind of like a symphony, not a concerto. It's in 4 movements instead of 3, and the orchestra has many solos in it, principal cello, principal horn, and the orchestra has a far bigger role than normally with a concerto. So I did not know, actually, when I called Claire and said, you want to do this? And we always talk about, what about this? What about this? What about Mozart? We looked at Mozart, we looked at some other things. And I said, what about Brahms too? And she paused and said, I've been waiting you to ask me that for years. I said, we haven't done it? And because I've done it a few times. And she goes, no, I've been waiting. I'm not going to do it until I do it with you. And so And what I heard by that is you have to have we all have different artists that we trust. It's kind of like a trapeze act. You want the person down there, you want to know that they'll catch you.
Definitely.
And this is one of those pieces. So we're really excited to do this. And I'm really excited because of the relationship we have and the fact that it will probably click right from the very first moment. And yeah, I'm really excited to do this with Claire.
Wonderful. Well, and I think that that's almost a little bit reminiscent of the composers that you've chosen to program this concert around. You know, I think Brahms and Schumann it's a friendship that is very well known in the classical music world. And I was hoping that you could speak a little bit about that friendship and why programming these two composers together was important to you at this point in time.
It was the exact reason I programmed it, was because of my friendship with Claire, that I said, well, this is going to be about two good friends making this beautiful. And I said, well, Brahms' best friend was Robert Schumann. And Schumann has a check. They both have 4 symphonies. Schumann they're both romantics, capital R romantics, in the sense that, as Beethoven, the first romantic, they all have an inner demon in their ear, as Beethoven said about his deafness. That they all have a struggle. They all have a moment that really can be the thing that inspires them and the thing that also can destroy them. For Brahms, it was probably the most heartbreaking. It was loneliness. The love of his life was his best friend's wife, Robert Schumann. And while we have no knowledge of them consummating this relationship in any physical way, there are quite a bit of letters that go back and forth that are very intimate. Robert Schumann, who dearly loved Brahms as his best friend, made his living and his claim to fame as a music critic. And he had the podium to really help people with their careers. He did this for several composers, but especially for Brahms. I believe he said about Brahms that, you know, many composers take long to evolve and develop. He said Brahms was sort of was like born out of Zeus's head and already completely perfect. You know, the 4 symphonies that Brahms wrote are often called perfect. The word perfect is used often when we talk about Brahms. And Schumann struggled. His struggle was not so much as a composer, but he suffered from mental illness, which today would definitely be considered bipolar. He ultimately deteriorated from syphilis, which also affects one's mental stability. He checked himself into an asylum early in life, and after multiple attempts of suicide, and died ultimately from complications of syphilis and some, at the time they just said melancholia and basically insanity. But today it would be bipolar that's not treated to an extreme, and the syphilis also made it worse. So he's a very tragic figure. And Clara, who was one of the first, if not the first, great women pianist of our time, rivaled Brahms, rivaled Franz Liszt. Franz Liszt and Clara Schumann almost had like competitions with each other. Clara Schumann is the one who said, okay, I'm going to perform from memory. And then all of a sudden everybody started performing from memory. Liszt turned the piano sideways so everybody could see his hands before your back was to. So they always tried to outdo each other. Once Robert Schumann died, Clara distanced herself from Johannes. We believe maybe because she felt guilty that the relationship was so intimate in a very meaningful way. It wasn't like, I think it's cheapening it to say it was an affair or something like that. It was a very close, meaningful friendship. But Clara felt guilty. Brahms even then went so far, because he felt so desperate without her and her friendship, that he reached out to Robert and Clara's daughter to try to connect that way, and that didn't go well. So Johannes Brahms is, I think, that in his music you often hear, even especially in this concerto in the very beginning, there's this, it's a Mona Lisa smile there's something underneath that is exhibiting some sort of resentment or pain or sadness. I think we can relate to Brahms's ailments more than any of the romantics, because being lonely is a terrible thing, and it's not being alone. That's different. He's truly lonely.
Yeah.
And you hear it in his music.
Definitely.
But that being said, he also gave the world he is the successor. People call Brahms's first symphony really Beethoven's 10th.
Yeah.
And so he's such an important composer of our time, and this concerto is as Claire said to me the other day on the phone to me, when we were sort of talking through and singing through some passages, she says, you know, even without COVID, this would be the highlight, not of anyone's season, but of one's life career. This is going to be a highlight of my career, to do this piece.
Yeah.
So that was exciting.
Well, and as many of the concerts that we have done so far, they all kind of relate back in this very human way to the state of the world and everything that we as a community are going through. And I think what you said about Brahms's loneliness is something that a lot of people can probably relate to right now. Is just this sense of feeling alone in life, and it's such a human condition. And oftentimes I think composers are dusty in a way where we kind of elevate them to a historical figure and we forget that they were people, and a lot of this music is coming from a very emotional place. And so, you know, just maybe you could speak to a little bit how, you know, you're hoping that the symphony is helping people through that loneliness and through this long winter that we have been through already.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this on staff, and we talk about this, about why we exist. We have talked about this before COVID, that we exist to really change people. We just changed our mission statement to engage, enrich, and transform lives, and it was such a perfect time to do it, because that's what we've been saying, that's what we've been wanting to do. And during COVID, we have said that we're essential. We didn't even consider not performing, as long as we could keep the musicians safe and the audience safe, and the audience isn't in the hall right now, but they can experience this on the YouTube platform, free. We're getting between thousands and thousands of people around the world watching. 7:30, and the great thing about this, other people are putting up pre-recorded stuff, and that's really cool and polished. And I like seeing some of that. What I like about ours, the live component of it, I like the fact that that people are experiencing it when we're doing it. And it's also more daring to do it live. But that's how we perform when the audience is there. We didn't want to change that. We wanted that energy,
Right.
the nervousness, the excitement, and the gratefulness for people sharing it with us at that moment. So, and it's easy to find on any smart TV, computer, tablet at Helena Symphony, or youtube.com/Helena Symphony, or you just find Helena Symphony, go to our website or our Facebook page, and you'll find it. So, and it's 7:30 on February 27th. And what's really cool, talking about the production, that you're not lonely because you feel like you're there with us, because we're not just sticking a camera in the back of the hall. The camera's on stage. There's multiple cameras all around. They're as if you were sitting next to Claire on the piano bench, that close.
Yeah.
You can practically, you know, it's more than life size. It's bigger than life. Conductor from the front, the other instruments in the orchestra, the individual instruments, super close, as if you're roaming the orchestra and moving to different sections and sitting in different sections of the orchestra. That's really, we wanted to give something. We didn't want to duplicate the concert hall experience. There's no way you can.
No.
It's a different energy. So we decided to innovate it in a way that gives people a totally different experience. We love the fact that you'll be interviewing Claire and me, and Claire can talk about the things we talked about here, and Claire will be, so at the intermission, you get to have one-on-one with the soloist and conductor and some musicians, and
You get perspectives that you wouldn't normally be able to get if you were just attending a concert.
right.
you
So
know?
it's not that it's impossible for me to compare, right?
Yeah.
One is better than the other. I mean, the live concert hall experience is so remarkable.
Yeah.
And to be in there with that energy and with other people to experience it together. That's
Definitely.
an incredible experience. But the experience at home, we wanted to give a different incredible experience that really was meaningful. So,
And accessible. I think that that's the other thing, is we want to make this, we're not charging for these concerts. You can watch them on our YouTube page for free. We wanted to make this an accessible experience and introduce new communities, new audiences, new age groups to classical music and to this, you know, sense of humanity for Brahms and Schumann and these composers that seem so out of touch sometimes, but are actually very relevant to what we're going through right now.
well, yeah, absolutely. And I like that how you put it, because that's, I think all these composers are. These composers had the same struggles. They might, you know, whether they were dealing with a world war or their own personal crises, these crises feel and seem the same for us when we go through them. And these composers can relate. They're not living in a bubble. And so it does mean a lot for people today. And so every 3 weeks or so, we either there's a children's concert or a symphony Masterworks concert. We want to be in people's homes. They can just pull up a drink or some food, and just it's a different experience. And we took a lot of cues from the Metropolitan Opera broadcast, and they're world renowned. So we've been doing this, and we hope people will join us.
Definitely. And we hope that all of you are able to join us this upcoming Saturday at 7:30 p.m. on the Helena Symphony YouTube page, and maybe feel a little less lonely and watch some beautiful music. So thank you so much for joining us on Symphony Preview on Helena Civic Television, and we hope you will all enjoy the concert this weekend. Thank you so much.